In this video, Freemason Canadian Public Safety Minister Anandasangaree recites a script of absurd lies to cover up the real source pertaining to the seemingly unlimited amounts of narcotics that just magically seem to make their way into Canada. The other individual questioning him in this staged, pre-planned theatrical interaction is another Freemason, Dane Lloyd, who is playing a controlled opposition acting role, pretending to actually care about the real source of drug trafficking in the country, while simultaneously openly presenting a fabricated premise. The entire pre-planned interaction has been set up by CSIS for the purpose of creating a smokescreen to cover up the clear and overwhelming evidence of their own involvement, as well as that of many Canadian police officers and the RCMP, in facilitating the open distribution of hard drugs all throughout the country. It is important to point out that no one who isn't a Freemason has any opportunity to be put into any type of position of prominence to speak and be heard by large segments of the population, or to be talked about in mainstream Canadian news. Only one who has taken an oath to a Masonic lodge and agreed to do anything, including lie incessantly, deceive, cover up crimes, or even commit crimes, on behalf of their Masonic brothers is permitted to rise to any important position in Canada's corrupt Masonic organized crime-controlled communitarian system. This is not a system of democracy. It is a system of Masonic lies, corruption, and crime, all fully covered up by both the mainstream and so-called alternative media, who routinely attempt to present these ridiculous staged lies on behalf of our Crown-connected intelligence services throughout all of the Five Eyes countries, as being truth. Due to the connection between CSIS, the CIA, the MI5 and MI6 in the UK, and the Israeli Mossad, there is a very rigid and structured sector of intelligence service organizations working together throughout all of the Five Eyes countries and abroad to orchestrate the hierarchy of organized crime that operates with impunity throughout all of these areas. Due to their control of all major media and social media platforms, they can effortlessly concoct any type of fabricated stories necessary to run cover over the provable involvement of CSIS, as well as most major Canadian police organizations and the RCMP in facilitating the movement of narcotics throughout Canada. The criminals involved in these deceitful operations know that, as communist despot Vladimir Lenin said, "A lie told often enough becomes truth." So they use their controlled mainstream and alternative social media platforms to promulgate an endless repetition of absurd lies presented as cover stories to attempt to blot out the overwhelming and glaring facts that Canadian Freemason police and our intelligence services are fully ensuring that these drug operations run unfettered. If any honest Canadian citizen reports the involvement of the corrupt Freemason Canadian police in drug trafficking, they will be quickly put on a watch list by CSIS, falsely labeled a domestic terror threat, and extensive psychological warfare methods, as well as wide-scale slander and discrediting campaigns will be used against them. They will use police to stalk and criminally harass these people who speak the truth, as well as sending many of their controlled criminal drug dealers and addicts to take part in an extensive harassment campaign, while also using RCMP to threaten and intimidate anyone who would be supportive of the subject of the harassment. This is how the criminal Freemasons in all important positions in Canada use an endless array of lies to cover up the crimes that they are involved in. Now, let's take a look at the staged interaction in which CSIS attempts to push blame towards supposed Mexican drug cartels that the actor playing the fake opposition role claims are operating in Canada. CSIS and criminal Freemason psychopath Danrogers are attempting to cover up their own involvement in these crimes by creating wild and ridiculous false tales so that those members of the public who are not aware of what is going on will blame anyone other than the corrupt Freemason Canadian police, CSIS, and the criminal members of the RCMP, who also regularly orchestrate large-scale mass deception events in coordination with the state-controlled communitarian Canadian media to attempt to deceive the public into accepting new tyrannical measures restricting basic rights and freedoms to protect us against non-existent so-called terror threats. And even if one were to accept the absurd premise that Mexican drug cartels were operating with impunity in Canada, if any of that ridiculous nonsense was true, then the real blame could be put at the feet of those who run our intelligence services and the RCMP. How utterly incompetent and inept would these people have to be to claim to not know that any of these things were happening when they have some of the most sophisticated and advanced technology that has ever been made available, which they openly use to spy on law-abiding Canadian citizens who speak the truth and speak out against corruption. Yet, somehow, CSIS and the Freemasons in our local police and the RCMP expect you to believe that they can't use this same technology to deter the flow of all hard drugs within the country. Any reasonable person would reach the conclusion that these utterly ridiculous lies are being used to cover up the clear complicity of CSIS and all major Canadian police organizations in facilitating the distribution of narcotics throughout the country.
To Secretary for being here. Minister, are you aware of the recent W5 report which quotes RCMP Superintendent Matthew Bertrand, who stated that at least 7 Mexican cartels are operating in Canada and using our country as a transshipment point for drugs?
As you're aware, Mr. Lloyd, we did list 7 cartels.
So you're aware of this report from W5?
We have. I haven't personally seen that report, but I'm aware.
Well, it's a shocking report. Minister, why do you think these criminal organizations have made Canada a central point for their operations in recent years?
Mr. Lloyd, across the world, I was with the Five Eyes in September, and there's a common theme of transnational criminal entities that are expanding their reach, and in this case,
so you don't think this is a Canada problem?
If we want to avoid points of order and all sorts of other interruptions, we should make sure that interpretation works and that we have a conversation that is understood by everyone. So as I'm making those comments, I'm stopping the clock, just inviting everyone to make sure that we have an intelligible conversation.
Thank you. Minister, you're saying this is a world problem, but why has this grown in Canada in recent years? Why do you think?
Look, the issues around transnational criminal organizations are something that we're deeply worried about. We've taken some concrete action, and Canada, like other countries, is facing an increase.
So you don't have any specific. Minister, your government lifted visa requirements for Mexico in December of 2016. Are you familiar with that decision?
I was not in cabinet at that time, but I am familiar with that decision, yes.
Do you agree that this decision expanded the cartel presence in Canada?
I don't have a direct causal link to that, but you're aware that last year that restriction was closed.
I'm aware, but do you think that there was a connection between lifting the visa requirements and the expanded presence of the cartel and the strengthening of their smuggling networks in Canada?
I'm not at liberty to speculate on that.
Following this, you can expect CSIS and the drug trafficking Freemason police to work in coordination with the controlled communitarian Canadian media to begin to start putting out a multitude of fake, scripted stories in which they use police to stage theatrical performances alongside the media claiming that they have supposedly busted some of these non-existent Mexican drug cartels which aren't actually operating in Canada at all. This is how the Canadian communitarian system of deceit, lies, inversion, and manipulation works. The media, the police, and huge numbers of citizens who are given extra benefits for partaking in lying, deceiving, bearing false witness, spying on their neighbors, criminally stalking law-abiding citizens, and partaking in endless amounts of staged false flag events are used to create a completely false Orwellian sense of reality where lies and inversion must be seen as truth, since the majority of their paid government agent liars say it is. If the majority says it's true, it must be true, right? And anyone who actually speaks the truth and presents facts must be crazy or mentally unstable, since the paid mob says so. So expect some staged news stories in which lies concerning Canadian police staging fake drug busts to be pushed by the criminal Masonic-run lie syndicates in the near future. You might have also noticed that most times, after I post videos talking about Canadian police and CSIS being involved in drug trafficking, all of a sudden a bunch of fake stories concerning staged and fabricated police drug busts start to be heavily pushed by the controlled Canadian media. These actions have become very predictable at this point. Here's the truth. There are no Mexican drug cartels operating in Canada, and these absurd lies are obviously nothing more than a contrived smokescreen that is meant to cover up the real criminals who are running these operations to purposefully destabilize the country.